Emo. The very word can either revive fond memories of music from one's youth or erupt into a barrage of resentment. For stealing teenagers, the punk scene had earmarked for another decade of manic panic hair dye, band stickers, and warped tours. Emotional music at the height of the style's popularity was associated with a very specific look, sound, and of course, haircut. But what fad isn't? My experience with the genre was a bit of a roller coaster over the years that all started with the punk scene. I've talked about my introduction to music as a whole on several other videos you can check out on the channel if you want a more in-depth explanation. My intro to punk music and the punk scene was around 94, 95-ish. Similar to so many other kids from the suburbs, Green Day was my gateway drug into 90s punk. I remember seeing the video for Basket Case on Much Music, the Canada version of MTV, and thinking, cool, it's like Nirvana, but fun. Not all the songs are about how much of a bummer life and the universe is. It was more like, we are doomed, but we are doomed together. Thanks to a few older siblings some friends had, and other gurus of the punk scene who took pity on us wannabes, it didn't take very long till my friends and I had discovered other bands like Propagandhi, Nofx, SNFU, Rancid. The list just went on and on. I'm not quite sure if it was a time and place kind of situation for the success or accessibility of punk. Maybe grunge kind of laid the groundwork for 90s DIY underground bands, and punk just kind of found an opening and went with it. No matter what it was, I had found music that I felt gave me an identity. Something that I could wear on my shield and be a part of. 1998 was the first time I actually got to go to a punk show. Strung out, straight-faced, and new Quadro at the Royal Albert Arms Hotel for like $20 or something. I had heard legends of other punk shows prior to this one that friends who had either less conservative parents or a plain old disregard for their parents' rules even to begin with had attended. The answer to my question, can I go to a punk show, had always been a hard no from my folks for the last year or so. Maybe I wore them down. Maybe it's because several other friends were going. Whatever it was, I got the okay for this one, and off we went to brave downtown Winnipeg. My second show was Propagandhi at Le Rendezvous a few months later. Third was a local show with Farm Fresh and Hush Feed. Fourth was Diesel Boy and Choke at the West End Cultural Center. After that, I kinda lost count. It became what you did on the weekend. This was probably around the time that the word emo was starting to get tossed around as a description to some bands or a style, but nothing like what it meant in the mid-2000s. An emo kid of the late 90s usually wore well-fitted jeans, not super baggy ones like some of the punks or skaters, but also not so tight that a vague outline of the contents of one's pocket was available for the world to assume, and getting a hand actually into a pocket was next to impossible past the knuckle. They were just normal, well-fitted jeans, and generally too short in the leg, so that about 3 inches of sock was showing. The shoe of choice was usually Converse All-Stars, and well-worn ones at that. A band shirt or a button shirt was acceptable, and black, thick rim glasses, kind of like the singer of Weezer wore, completed the look. The style kind of went hand in hand with college rock or indie rock, and in my mind, the three were interchangeable. Well, in the 90s at least. A local Winnipeg band called the March December Swing could have been considered part of the 90s emo genre, I suppose. My friends Dave Gillis and Dave Kutch were both in the band, and the three of us worked together at Value Village in the late 90s. Dave Gillis joined Propagandhi in 2006, although I think he was better known as the Beeve during that time. Other college rock bands, or emo if I dare say, started popping up on my radar, like the Get Up Kids and the Promise Ring. My life changed January 20th, 2000 though, when after seeing the March December Swing at the West End Cultural Center, a band from Brampton, Ontario hit the stage called Moneen. Moneen started playing in 1999 after some of the members' former band Perfectly Normal broke up. I've heard legends of the name Moneen being the name of an actual person in Brampton that some of the band's members knew, and it was some kind of an inside joke of how funny it would be if they named their band after that person. If anyone knows the actual story, please leave a comment. Moneen did come up on names.org as a real name, although very rare. being most popular in Ireland. The band's first EP, Smaller Chairs for the early 1900s, was recorded in singer and guitarist Kenny Bridges' mum's basement and released on Horby Records, the band's own label. Perhaps it was through Edmonton band Choke, Regina's Layaway Plan, or both. Either way, Moneen attracted the attention of local Winnipeg label Small Man Records, who re-released the Smaller Chairs EP, and Moneen hit the road out west for the first time, January 2000. The lineup at this point was Kenny Bridges, singing and playing guitar, Chris Hughes, also singing and playing guitar, Peter Crepan on drums, and Eric Hughes on bass. Moneen's actual bass player, Mark Bowser, seriously cool ass name by the way, wasn't able to make the tour, and Eric was holding down the 4 strings. As they set up their gear on January 20th at the WEC, they lit a bunch of candles and had a spotlight kind of in the bass drum pointing up and to the side. Okay, so I guess they will be an emo band, I thought to myself. They didn't really look like emo kids, not really like punks either. Chris had huge dreads and actually kind of looked like a hippie. There was a sticker from the band Choke on the bass amp, so that was a plus. I had originally just come to see Dave's band and was planning to start making my way home through the frozen tundra of a Winnipeg winter in January, but I'd figured I'd at least stay for a few songs. Moneen started playing and something happened to me. It was like they were the band I had been waiting for my whole life. The perfect mix of all styles of music I liked, wrapped into one. As they were playing, they jumped around like crazy, yet were still decently tight on all the guitar leads. In between songs, they were funny. At the end of the set, the guitar players, Kenny and Chris, threw off their guitars, like literally threw them. They were both kind of crouched on the ground around their pedal boards, playing with the knobs on their delay pedals. Whatever they were doing was getting all sorts of crazy space sounds, feedback, and a whole galaxy of other awesomeness I had never quite heard before. My mind was blown. I ran to the merch table to buy a CD. I realized at that point I had no money on me, so I told the guy behind the merch table not to leave no matter what. With a speed usually reserved for neutrinos and other cosmic rays, I dashed to 7-Eleven and back in record time, taking out my last $20 from the ATM. I handed the 20 to the guy at the merch table and asked for a Moneen CD. He was the wrong guy and wasn't selling Moneen CDs. Since I had demanded he stay and felt kind of an obligation to buy something from him, I explained my situation. Luckily, the CD he was selling were $10 and Moneen was $10, so I had enough to buy both. My life was now just a tiny bit more complete than it used to be. Not even a month later, on February 12th, Moneen was coming back to Winnipeg. They had a show booked at the Royal Albert Arms, the same place I saw my first punk show 2 years prior. I caught word Moneen was also trying to get an all-ages show sorted the same day before they played the bar show. A friend had something in the works at the Broadway Neighborhood Center and offered my band at the time, Lacking Intelligence, an opening slot if we could use my PA as monitors. I agreed and actually got to open for Moneen, although I don't think any of the members saw my band or weren't really that impressed or anything if they did. After the all-ages show was over, we piled into someone's car to head to the Royal Albert to see Moneen again. 2 shows in 1 night. The band gave all they had at both and didn't disappoint even in the slightest. That was it. I wanted to play in a touring band. It just seemed that they had it figured out. Their fingers on the central nerve of it all. The hidden meaning of life was to play music, but not just at the same dank bar night after night, at hundreds, if not thousands of dank bars all over the place. To get out there, meet all the fabulous people in the world, and hang out with them, make friends with them, share something with them, meet their pets, probably even sleep on their floors. It was the next level, and I wanted up. Smaller Chairs rarely left my CD player, and I don't think I missed a Moneen show for the rest of that year. Buying merch every single time, including my blue Moneen hoodie that I wore on tour for years and years. I actually still have the hoodie, but it's so far past wearable, it's just kind of a memory more than clothing. Moneen's first full-length, The Theory of Harmonial Values, was released August 2001. At first, I wasn't as blown away as with the Smaller Chairs EP, but after 3 or 4 listens, the new album wrapped its musical tentacles around my cerebral cortex and wouldn't let go. The Theory of Harmonial Harmonial Values was recorded at Chemical Sound in Toronto, the same studio that Death from Above laid down You're a Woman, I'm a Machine, and Sloan had done a few albums there also in the late 90s. Greg Dawson produced the Theory album. He was mostly known for playing in metal bands at the time, but obviously had some chops as a producer, and cranked out an amazing album that kind of kept you guessing where it was going to go at points, and headbanging and singing along at others. At the end of the album, there was a recording by Dr. Laszlo Pronowski explaining the theory of harmonial values. I'm not sure if it is actually a theory, or just something odd they put at the end of the album to attempt to capture the madness of their live show. I was part of the Moneen mailing list when mailing lists were still a thing, and asked Peter, the drummer, about the theory. Peter was who answered if you ever replied to the mailing list. That was another part of the band I loved so much. They actually felt like friends more than a band. Like people you would give the shirt off your back for, and actually wanted to see succeed. Peter said he didn't really know that much about the theory, and to ask Kenny. At the time I made this video, I'm still waiting for a chance to ask him. Moneen had a bit of a rotating lineup of bass players in the early days. Eric Hughes, who I originally saw the band play with, seemed like a perfect fit, but was only a fill-in for Mark Bowser. Mark did a few tours with Moneen, but was replaced by Chris Slowratch, or New Chris, at some point before recording the Theory album. New Chris didn't really seem to fit. The few times I saw Moneen live with him, he was great at bass, but didn't quite have the same madness and personality that all the other members projected during a performance. Moneen played a bunch of notable Winnipeg shows around this time. One I remember in particular was with Choke and Layaway Plan. During Moneen's last song, all members of all bands jumped on stage with their instruments and pretended to play along. It was awesome. Kind of a time just before emo and emo-related bands got huge and kind of split away from the punk scene. A time before the haircuts and Hot Topic began dominating the look. Before I heard kids utter the words, "I've progressed past punk," when trying to explain their new fascination for screamo. Or people attempting to compliment my band by saying, "It's cool you guys still play punk." You know, trying to keep it alive. The next time I remember seeing Moneen was in Edmonton during a visit with my family. Face to Face was on tour, and Moneen was direct support. Just out of coincidence, the Epitaph Punkorama tour was in town the same night, so both shows got combined into a super show. It was huge, like 2,000 people. Maybe more. Moneen had van problems, so arrived late, and were scrambling trying to set up. Once things got going, the whole place erupted. Maybe it was just because I was so into it, but it felt like everyone knew all the words to Moneen's songs. I'm pretty sure Eric, who played bass on the first tour, had rejoined the band as the permanent bass player by this point. I was so happy to see a band that had worked so hard touring and making amazing music had actually become successful, giving hope that you don't gotta be an asshole and or kiss every butt possible to make it in this biz. Trevor Keith of Face to Face maybe felt the same about Moneen, and he produced the next album. Are We Really Happy With Who We Are Right Now was released June 2003 on Small Man Records in Canada and Vagrant Records elsewhere. It was recorded at Audio International and the Eye Socket, two studios in California. The album felt like an upgrade from the last, as crazy as the Theory album at times, but also more cohesive and structured, kinda rounding out the sound Moneen had been crafting for the last 3 years. This was kind of the part where time seemed to speed up for Moneen and I. I still considered myself a super fan of Moneen and listened to Are We Really Happy countless times, but the band kind of progressed past playing Winnipeg every other month. I was starting to tour a bunch with my own band, so probably wouldn't have been in town if they did still play Winnipeg that much anyways. At some point I remember Moneen playing the Walker Theatre, a 1,600 capacity soft-seater in Winnipeg. They were opening for a bigger emo band and tickets were something like $40. I did catch some of them out back near their van and was met with some hello hugs and stuff, but didn't get to see them play. The Red Tree was released April 2006 on Vagrant Records. It's a tough game to pick and choose the best when it comes to a Moneen album. They are all amazing in a unique way. I would guess commercially, The Red Tree was probably the most successful, and some could argue this was the height of their career. I kind of lost track of Moneen for a few years after that. I would see snippets of them online on tour with amazing bands, playing huge giant shows shows, and it always brought a smile to my face. The Red Tree got tons of spins in the tour van, and my band High Five Drive even did a cover of one of the songs for fun at a show in Saskatoon. It might have been around when YouTube started to become a thing, or it might have also been just elsewhere on the internet, but I had found a clip of Moneen playing live on MTV. It was a new song called The Great Escape. Peter had been replaced by Steve Nunaro on drums, and the song was the perfect mix of Moneen's craziness and amazing songwriting. Maybe it was just the song I needed to hear at the moment. Maybe I related on several levels, but I got the same feeling I felt when I first saw the band perform almost 10 years prior. I listened to the song about 100 times in the first week of its discovery, eagerly anticipating another Moneen release. The World I Want to Leave Behind was released one day before my birthday, September 15th, 2009. I still think it's the album with the two best Moneen songs ever written, Hold That Sound and The Great Escape. At this point, I hadn't seen Moneen perform live for over 5 years. I was and will always be a super fan of the band, but I've been kind of demoted to a passive super fan. No longer was I up front singing along to every word, but was now kind of in the back, nodding along to the beat. Is music a time and a place for all of us? If you heard some of your favorite bands from when you were a teenager, but for the first time as an adult, would you have had the same response? Moneen caught me at a time in my life that I really needed something to believe in, that there is a reason to care about something, a goal in life. They inspired me to be the person I've become, and I'm so happy I had the chance to play the part of one of the faces in the crowd at their shows.